Hi guys, welcome to our hashtag Be Kind Online campaign podcast. My name is Divina and I'm here from NYAWA. NYAWA is a non-profit organization. It's youth-led and it supports mental health, and it was founded in 2021. And today I have Nani Jayakumar. Hi Nani.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
No worries. Nani is a trainee clinical psychologist. She's also a beauty queen and an advocate for mental health. And she's also spread awareness about online harassment through her hashtag cybercancel campaign. Yeah, hi Nani. So maybe we can kind of start with your own personal experiences with cyber harassment. What was that like, and when did that all start for you?
Okay, so it's first started when I was about 16 years old. So that was my first encounter with cyberbullying. At the time, it was just harassment for a year straight, and all of this happened predominantly through Instagram. But you'll be surprised to know that the lengths that people can go to just to cyberbully you. So the fact that this was happening for a year straight was very debilitating. I think I was just spiraling at that time. I mean, you're a 16-year-old kid, like what do you do? It was a lot. It took a toll on me. But I will say they said a lot of nonsensical vulgarities, so it wasn't really a dig at my, appearance or anything like that. It was just wanting to get on the hate train.
Right.
But yeah, it was a lot. Eventually it went away, it dissipated, but I was spiraling, and yeah, it did take a toll. And then a couple years later I ended up joining my first pageant, and it was really nice. I tried to do my own crowdfunding to help build a mud school in India. So we had like an online platform that people could donate money to, and then they had like a comment section where you could say all these, well wishes and things like that. And what people were doing is they were misusing the platform, and they were saying a lot of nasty things, about my appearance, false accusations, making fun of the way that I looked. It was quite painful to watch. And I remember that I was doing my degree at the time. I was in uni, and I would get calls from my pageant director and my mum, and they would be like, oh, there's this comment, you should delete it. So it was always like damage control. I had to keep checking, and I had to keep deleting comments and things like that. That was very hard to watch and go through. So it got to a point where the moderator had to end up disabling the comment section. And unfortunately, it wasn't just something that they could do for me. If they disabled the comments, they had to do it for every other participant, which is really sad. So it was almost like, because of me, everyone else had to go through it. And I wish that didn't happen, but that was kind of like our last attempt at resort at kind of trying to resolve things. That happened, and then it didn't stop there, unfortunately. In 2020, I ended up getting cyberbullied yet again. So there were fake accounts that kept popping up. Someone sent me a voice message just screaming at me, and I didn't know why. And then they ended up photoshopping my pictures with obscene images, and that was very disturbing to look at, not something that anyone should be looking at. So that was when I was like, you know what, enough is enough. I'm not going to deal with this anymore. I started searching, I started questioning, like, what can I do about this? How do I put an end to it? So that was kind of when, I got this whole cyber cancel thing rolling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was after years of going through this in many different ways.
Yes.
Yeah. And it all started when you were only 16 years old. You must have felt so confused, so lost. Did you talk to anyone about it? Were you afraid to?
That was the thing though, you see, because when I was 16, you're so afraid, what are your parents going to say? They're probably going to say things like, oh, you should be off social media, stay off social media. The phone is the problem. And then you don't know how other people are going to react. I think at the age of 16, you're looking for social acceptance and things like that. When you have people saying all these nasty things and going at you online, what do you do? Where do you go? So there was also this sense of shame and FOMO, fear of missing out. What if other people don't like me because of all these things that are happening? So I kind of had to deal with it by myself for a whole year. So that's why it really did take a toll on me. I was frustrated, that it wasn't ending. I was upset. Why was this happening to me? I was confused. A lot of questions. So it did take a toll on my mental health, yeah.
What was that like for your mental health at the time?
I think, at that point of time, I didn't know a lot of psychological terms. All I knew were the basic emotions. When someone hurts you, you feel sad. When someone hurts you, you feel angry. But also just feeling very anxious, like always on edge. Because when I was 16, they ended up finding out my IC number. I don't know how they got that. I still don't know until today. I don't know what someone could have done with my IC number at that point in time, but to me it felt like, oh my goodness, they know my personal information, like what are they going to do with this? Yeah.
That must have been so scary.
It was. So I was always on edge. I was always very hesitant, and I think a lot of trust issues start to build up with that as well. You're always conscious about who you have in your surroundings, like what kind of information you're giving them. Is this something that can be used against you? Yeah.
And after 1 year of that, what kind of inspired you to say, hey, I'm not going to take this anymore, I'm going to talk to someone about it or do something?
So that didn't happen at 16, unfortunately. I just kind of, developed this avoidance coping mechanism that I'm hoping that if I ignore it or if I get off social media, that eventually it will just go away. If I don't have to look at it, then it won't happen to me.
Okay.
So that's kind of what happened, just develop this avoidance coping style. So it wasn't until 2020 that the person screaming at me, obscene images and all that I decided, you know what, this is the last straw. I've had it up to here. Like, I need to do something about this right now. Yeah.
And so from 16 onwards, up until 2020, you didn't really have anyone supporting you. You didn't have a support system. Your parents didn't know about it. And what was it like when they did find out about it?
I think they had an inkling when I first started doing my pageant, which was in 2018. That was the first inkling that they had, with the crowdfunding page, my mom calling me, asking me to delete comments. But they didn't know the severity of it until 2020.
Okay.
I was very scared to tell them. I remember the fear just building up and my brain constantly going, should I tell them, should I not, should I tell them, should I not? And then at last I was like, you know what, I need help. This is beyond me, this is beyond my capabilities, and I do not regret that at all. Surprisingly, they were shocked to hear it. I think, in their time, they didn't have all this, then now we have it, in this generation, this era. And my dad actually helped me make a police report. So that was my first step, I think, in regaining some sense of power. But it was very scary, just going into a police station, giving them like all the details and all that. But I'm really glad and thankful that I had him to support me. Yeah.
And how did the police report help? Did it help?
Okay. So what happened was, after making the police report, I reported it to Cyber 999 and MCMC as well. From what I realized, sometimes these online platforms, they have thousands of reports coming in a day, so the time it takes to even just get to my report takes ages, and by then the problem is either already resolved or the account that you complained about has probably disappeared and they've created a new one. But what I did was, I took a picture of the police report, I posted it on my Instagram story, but I blurred out the wordings because apparently you're not allowed to post the whole police report, what was written. So I blurred out the wording, but you could see just enough to know that it was a police report. And I think that kind of scared my bully. So that was, in a way, me regaining my power. Yeah.
You must have felt so powerless throughout that whole time up until that point.
Yep.
Until, like, what do I do? What can I say? What helped you during that time when you felt powerless? What helped you cope?
Number one, I think the support of my family. It wasn't something that I could have done alone. Number two, I think having gone through the trenches, being dragged through the mud, I think it got to a point where I told myself that I now have all these resources. I now have this newfound knowledge and this newfound ability that, I'm not going to allow someone to have power over my life. It was more so that I came to this realization that I am in control of the narrative. I will not allow anyone to devalue or to degrade me in any way, shape or form. Yes, I cannot control what other people say or what other people do, but what I can control is how, in the way that I allow other people to make me feel. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I am in control of
Yeah.
the narrative, taking that power back.
Yep.
How would you try to maybe advise other people who are in the same situation, girls who are feeling powerless?
I think, when you are going through something similar to this, something like this, you probably feel a lot of mixed negative emotions. Maybe you feel upset, disappointed, social isolation, maybe even depressed. But for me, what helped was this quote that I hold very near and dear to my heart. It's to never let anyone make you feel inferior without your consent. And what that means is that you do not give your power into somebody else, right? Because the minute that you do that, you are immediately allowing someone else to fill your mind with self-doubt, confusion, questions, all these different negative emotions that you don't want to feel about yourself. So, why should someone else have that much power over your life? So that's something that I keep near and dear to my heart. As long as you are able to seek out the resources that you need, know that you are not alone, know that there is help available, even if it seems like all hope is lost and there's no way out. All you need to do is just take that first step. Yeah.
That first step must be the scariest one.
It's the scariest, it's the hardest, but just seek out the help. Maybe even you can try looking for people that have been through similar experiences, and trust me, there will be people who are more than willing to help you out.
And I'm sure during your #cyber cancel campaign, that's when you started to learn, like, oh my gosh, this is so common, this is so prevalent. What was that like for you?
For me, starting up the campaign the goal was basically to cancel cyberbullying collectively, realizing it's not a standalone effort, but it's a group effort. I cannot do this on my own. But the more that we try to spread, through cyber awareness, the more other people can join in on the movement, right? And basically, it was more about the more conversations we had with people, the more we came to realize that there are so many people going through this. The number of DMs that we get is insane. There's so many, and so many people feel like they're lost, they're stuck. And there's so many different types of cyber crimes. It's not just limited to cyber bullying, but more so a lot of financial crimes that are happening online as well that ends up leading to cyberbullying after that. So it helps to know that people are not alone. And one of the things that I think we tried to do is that whenever people send emails or things like that talking about their story, we share them anonymously, especially when I do talks like this, so that people are able to see for themselves and be like, oh my gosh, I relate to that, oh my god, I went through that. And then to hear that people come out on the other side, that it feels like a success story, that hey, you know what, like, we are here for you, let us help you. Yeah.
And when people reach out to you, do they also talk about resources, steps that they should do?
They ask about what they should do. They ask for help, because a lot of the times the people that reach out don't know what to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And what kind of advice do you tell them? Is it making a police report? Is there anything else?
Yeah. So in all honesty, the advice that I used to get when I was going through it was ignore them, just block them, just report them. And it just wasn't feasible, or it didn't make sense. It's easier said than done, because when you actually do it, they show up like whack-a-mole. They keep coming back, they keep reappearing. So that wasn't helping. So you actually have to take more legal, more serious steps. And it was just about giving people the confidence to be able to do that on their own.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So kind of empowering them by saying, this is the most difficult step, but it's the most important. And it seems that making that police report, even though it's scary, it can make a change.
Yep.
You can scare the people online, the bully, into feeling like, okay, maybe I should stop this behavior. And has anything happened for you after the police report, or is that...
there were still instances in which even after that I was still being cyberbullied. Some people would send I don't know where they would get my personal and private information from, and they would still use that as an opportunity to send me, nasty emails, degrading words, things like that. But what I've learned to do is that sometimes what people meant for evil, God meant for good. That's the way I like to think of it. Meaning to say that even though someone does something bad, I can sort of like flip it or turn it upside down. Which is what I did with my podcast that I have out on Spotify. It's called From Pain to Power, and that's how I genuinely feel about this whole experience that I've been through. So what I do these days is, okay, if you send me hate, I'm going to use it as content. I am going to put it out there to show people that, hey, these are the kind of messages that you may receive. So if you want to send me hate, you can do that, but just know that it probably will not affect me as much as you think it will. Instead, I'm going to use it for content to help educate other people.
That's really beautiful and empowering, because it takes away their power. It takes away, whatever trying to influence that they're trying to negatively put on you, and instead you use it to inspire others, to motivate others. Yeah. And when it comes to your cyber cancel campaign, you've also tried to do certain advocacy work, trying to, relate it to laws and regulations in Malaysia. What has that been like for you?
It's been such a difficult process, let me tell you. I mean, well, let's just talk about, the laws that they have in place at the moment.
Okay.
So I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's Section 233 of the Multimedia and Communications Act 1998. I hope I'm getting this right. So if you are charged under that specific law, you get a maximum of 50,000 ringgit as a penalty. And even though this law is there, it talks about misuse of networking services, but that's very vague. It's not really addressing cyberbullying specifically. And then most recently, with the case that went viral recently, earlier this year, 2 people were charged for that. One was charged under Section 233 and they got the penalty of 50,000 ringgit. The other person ended up being charged under Section 14 of the Minor Offences Act, and they only got a maximum penalty of 100 ringgit, which is quite disappointing, because what it means is that the consequence is not strong enough to excuse the bad behavior, which means that there's a potential for it to reoccur, for it to happen again, right? So we need to encourage for more specific laws to be, implemented. You look in other countries, you look in Singapore, they are more proactive in terms of things like this. And in terms of what Cyber Cancel has done, a few years back, before the cabinet reshuffling, we worked with a political party and a policymaker in this party in hopes of coming up with more specific laws that could be drafted up to Parliament and things like that. So there was a lot of serious works that were happening, and it took a lot of time, effort, discussion, meetings, but everything kind of came to a halt when the cabinet reshuffling happened, right? So it's really sad, because you have a lot of people in the public that are really trying their best to create a change, right? But ultimately, the government plays a vital role in executing this change. So we can do the best that we can, but at last they kind of have the final say. Yeah.
And what kind of changes would you personally want to see, from government, from society?
In terms of the government, I really think that more specific laws need to not only be implemented, but to be enforced. I think that that's very important. I read somewhere that someone said that, we don't need more specific laws to be implemented and things like that. But I genuinely think that we do. I mean, we just need to look at where we are ranking in Asia, not even the world, just in Asia. We are like one of the top spots. So that itself should be a call to action that we should be doing something. In terms of what we can do for our youth. So for example, when I was in school, I don't remember ever learning about cyberbullying in the curriculum or anything like that. And maybe that was also because, maybe at that point of time, it wasn't really a thing. I think that now kids are using, their phones, their iPads to do their homework. The digital world is so important. that we should be able to start implementing more cyber awareness programs in schools.
Yeah.
Maybe even handing out pamphlets to parents to recognize like warning signs of what cyberbullying may look like in a child. Equipping the school counselors to be able to take this on and how they can better support the child and things like that.
Yeah. You know, it's so prevalent, especially with the youth, especially with teenagers, sadly. And that's the kind of age where you yourself were affected. It's not the age where you feel confident stepping up and talking about it. If, you know, one of your listeners was to be listening right now and they were a teenager themselves in the same position, what would you want to say to them?
I know you feel like there's no way out. I know that this is probably one of the most difficult times of your life. You're probably going through it right now, all of the negative emotions that you're feeling, and it's so valid. What I will say to you is that this too shall pass in time, however long that may be, but to never give in your power to someone else, to never let someone else have autonomy over your life. I think that you know yourself well enough to know the lies and the things that people may spew about you, but just knowing yourself well enough to know that you'll be able to get through this and to be able to seek out the resources that you need. Trust that everything will happen for good, and I think that's kind of the only way to see it, or for you to be able to have a bit of optimism, because it's very difficult, and it's especially difficult to get out of that mindset. It's about never losing hope, knowing that, you know, I will be able to come out of this eventually, if not now, soon, but I will be able to.
Yeah. And that's a really beautiful message. And, you know, you've been doing a lot of incredible work over the past few years. And it hasn't been easy, I'm sure. Taken a lot of strength, a lot of resilience.
A lot. I feel like this whole thing was almost like, imagine a wall and you're like breaking it down and then having to rebuild constantly. But that's also helped so much with my own personal growth and resilience.
Thank you, Nani. Thank you for joining today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you. You know, it must not be easy coming back, reliving all of this, but you do incredible
work. It wasn't, but then I think I remind myself that, you know, the work that we are doing helps other people, and that just makes it all the more worth it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So NYAWA will also be continuing a new campaign that we'll be launching soon. So keep out for that. That'll be on NYAWA's website, Instagram, and X as well. We'd love for other women to share their stories about this online harassment that they have faced, and we will be learning about it and spreading out more awareness for that. So thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you.